You have been lied to. You have been sold a false bill of goods by society. That's what we're going to be talking about today. But first, you already know what time it is. It's validation time. I need you to subscribe to my channel because it fulfills my soul. I don't make any money off of this. I just like doing it. So please just subscribe to my shit because I want you to. Okay, today we're going to talk about the fact that you've been lied to. You have been lied to by the mainstream at a level that I don't think that you even fathom. Oftentimes I'll post little statuses on some of my personal social media networks because I'm just trying to mess with people. I'm trying to stir the pot a little bit because people don't think. They have been so heavily, there's no better word for it. They have been conditioned to believe things that are just not true. Often, many of the things that you're told from the mainstream are not only lies, but they are the opposite of the truth. And the way that it works is, there's something called confirmation bias. And confirmation bias basically occurs whenever you make a decision, especially a deeply emotional decision, it's very hard to change your mind. No matter how logically somebody presents an argument to you, once you've made a decision and invested into something very heavily, you want to stay consistent to it to a point where almost all reason is abandoned. I've watched many videos from different people like James Altucher, Grant Cardone, Ramit Sethi, and they all talk about the fact that for the most part, the single family home, like going and getting your first home instead of saving that cash to invest in stocks or saving that cash to invest in income generating properties, is a scam created by banks to steal money from you. And most people, that's one fight. I won't even get into that fight or argument with people because people get very emotional when you talk about their homes. They will defend home purchasing to the death. Not necessarily because it's the logical argument. There's actually different logical arguments in certain areas to be had. Like certain areas it's better to rent, and certain areas it actually is better to own a home. But most people are just blindly dogmatic because they've been fed a lie by the mainstream. Literally, banks concocted the idea of the American dream, consumer culture, and home ownership to brainwash you into funneling money into their pockets. There's no cuter way for me to describe that. Look at college. For the most part, there are cases where college is good and acceptable. If you want to be something that needs a license, you have to go to college. There's certain reasons why college can be beneficial. And actually often, if you're the type of self-motivated person who really takes the reins of their learning and does things like get scholarships, actually participates in the financial literacy and work placement programs and doesn't graduate with a bunch of debt because you were working hard the whole time, college is pretty useful. But for the most part, it's a fucking scam. It's very obvious to somebody who's using logic and reason. But again, confirmation bias comes in and people justify their decisions. There's no asset that you would purchase with the same type of terms that you would purchase a loan from college. There's no other scenario in which you would enter into such an agreement where you would basically borrow an amount of money that could turn you into an indentured servant for decades in order to get a meager return. If it were presented to you in something else like a stock that had that type of performance, you wouldn't do it at all. But again, you've been conditioned and fed a lie. I put a status up on my personal Facebook talking about how business school specifically is a joke. And make no mistake about it, business school is an absolute joke. All business degrees are 100% worthless because they don't teach you any of the things that matter in actual business. If business school was legit, you'd get a bunch of direct response copywriting books and classes on sales, persuasion, financial literacy, and investing. But you get bullshit PowerPoints by people who have had no other job than teaching business. How are you going to learn business from somebody who hasn't even been employed by one, who has been a professor their entire life? I digress. So basically, society, for lack of a better word, they rain down dogmatic commandments that people come to live by. And, it's almost as if most people, like I've said before, it's like you have Stockholm syndrome. You don't know that you're being held captive by these beliefs that are not your own. I always talk about the fact that if I were to take your same DNA and put you in a different country with different parents, with a different religion, you'd have a whole different belief system. But people cling to their belief system so bad because, again, confirmation bias. So for myself personally, I go through a lot of time where I question and flip-flop on things I believe all the time. Like, it's gotten to the point where I don't necessarily even know what to believe. I'm just exploring and learning. But what I do know for almost certain is that most of what you see in the mainstream, from the media, even from movies and TV and books, the level of propaganda is so pervasive that you should probably just avoid it altogether and work on yourself and find corners of the decentralized media where people are actually trying to tell you the truth, right? So the gatekeepers don't want you to access the truth, because if you access the truth, then their house of cards comes tumbling down. They can't get compliance from the masses without brainwashing. So at the one hand, it's impersonal. They're doing it because it's the only way to get you to obey, to behave. And yeah, I use harsh terms like obey, behave. I once read an article by one of my favorite writers, Nassim Taleb, and he talks about how being an employee is in many ways a form of slavery. Like, when you have somebody and you get them hooked into a job, get them hooked into a mortgage, hooked into a car note, hooked into consumer debt, hooked to a fixed location, for all intents and purposes, you have a slave. You have somebody that you own. If you don't wake up and are able to do things by your own choice and free will, somebody owns you. And I don't say that even in a moralistic judgment. Like, literally, they control. Like, take my opinion out of it. If you're in a situation where you're stuck in a bunch of hooks and debt traps, you are at the mercy of your employer. You are at the mercy of the government. You are at the mercy of society if you don't learn how to think for yourself and pay the alternate means to getting what you want by thinking for yourself. So trust nobody. Don't even trust me. I'm just some guy on the internet giving you suggestions. You should think critically about everyone you talk to. Nobody is perfect. Even the people I look up to, I might agree with 75% of what they say, but then 25% I don't. There might be someone who I disagree with 95%, but that little nugget, that 5%, like, I'll take it. I'll run with it, right? So just know that you have to think of for yourself, and that on the most part, you have been lied to, propagandized, and conditioned by society. And until you unlearn that, you're fucked. Okay! You 2.0 is the book. Check it out. Amazon, all of the platforms. Stay tuned for more videos, more highly energetic conspiratorial videos from your boy. Signing off.